Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would give my little fight review and my fight analyzation of the very interesting fight, and probably so far, at least as of yet, well, I don't know if I want to say the biggest upset of the year, but out of any other big fight that ended up happening this year, probably the biggest upset on any big fight card between that of Josh Taylor and Teofimo Lopez, including myself, because I also had predicted that Josh Taylor would be a little bit too much for Teofimo Lopez. I think that I ended up predicting him to win this fight 8 rounds to 4. I did not look, or excuse me, I did not like how Teofimo Lopez was looking within his prior fights. I thought that he was looking a little bit too hittable and a little bit too limited. And most importantly, I thought that it was very clear that he was having some mental issues inside and outside the ring. So Teofimo Lopez was really going to have to man up in this fight. He was really going to have to show the best version of himself. And I have to give Teofimo Lopez a lot of credit because it takes a lot of work to get over some of your mental demons, especially in that of the boxing ring. Boxing is probably the hardest sport in terms of getting back up on the horse because once you suffer a loss, certain fighters are never mentally the same ever again. And I always said that in my view that Teofimo Lopez, the main reason why he lost that George Kambosos fight, and don't get me wrong, George was a tough style for Teofimo because they do a lot of similar things. But I think a big part of the reason why Teofimo Lopez lost that fight is because he was suffering from certain mental issues, and on top of that, Teofimo Lopez, I don't think that he really took George Kambosos that seriously. And I've been saying this for a very long time now. I think that Teofimo Lopez fought a very dumb fight against George Kambosos. And I think that if they were to have a rematch, then more than likely Teofimo Lopez, he would probably knock him out within about 8 rounds. Just my personal view of it. At least if the best version of Teofimo Lopez shows up. But maybe he wouldn't knock him out in 8 rounds. I'm not sure because once you lose to a fighter, that kind of affects their confidence and, they're hyperactive and hyper aware of what's going on around them. So you never know. But, anyways, congratulations to Teofimo Lopez for winning the fight. Now, why do I think that Teofimo Lopez ended up winning the fight? Well, one could maybe blame the year layoff for Josh Taylor. One could maybe argue that he was off for about 16 months. I've never been personally big on, the avenue of saying that a fighter ended up losing a fight just because they were off for a year. Because I don't personally believe that being off for a year is quite enough, but maybe certain people would disagree. But that's just my personal view of it. Listen, one of the main reasons, in my view, why Josh Taylor, and maybe it was because he was off for a year. Who knows? That may have been a part of it. I'm not saying that it wasn't a factor at all, but like I said, I don't think that I would use that as the main factor. Like I said, if Josh Taylor was going to come into this fight in the Jack Catterall form that he came in, he was going to lose this fight. And I don't think that he was as poor as what he was in the Jack Catterall fight. I think that he moved better and that he was certainly better in the first part of the fight than what he was in the Jack Catterall fight. But he did not use his feet enough. He did not use the lead hand to the greatest of degrees. And after this fight, I really almost have to question about, is Josh Taylor really as skilled as what I once apparently thought? Because Josh Taylor, when he was not able to bully Teofimo Lopez and he was not able to get certain shots on the inside with an early body attack, he really had no clue how to handle Teofimo Lopez whatsoever. And that's not me saying that he was not able to get certain shots. He was still able to hit him with certain body shots and, certain hooks and other shots like that here and there. But pretty much after the first half of the fight, Teofimo Lopez was able to dominate him in the second half of the fight. Now, I don't think that it was quite as far apart as what many other people scored it. Like I said, I think that a lot of people going into this fight were hoping for Teofimo Lopez to win this fight because he is more marketable. As I said, he is of the Latin American demographic, and them and Black American fighters, they're the most marketable in terms of boxing. But, it just is what it is. But Teofimo Lopez, I think I scored the fight either 7 rounds to 5 or 8 rounds to 4 for Teofimo Lopez. I would have to take a look back and rewatch the fight to see exactly how I would score it. But I actually don't mind the 7 rounds to 5 scorecards for that at Teofimo Lopez because I thought that Josh Taylor probably could have debatably won 4 of the first 6 rounds. Of course, one of the rounds that people gave Teo, I believe, was the fourth round because of the alleged stagger. I actually don't think that a stagger happened, and when I rewatched it, my suspicions were confirmed because I believe that their feet got a little bit tangled when Josh Taylor tried to throw a left hook over the top. And not only did he get swayed a little bit with that, but his foot was on the inside, which pretty much caused him to tumble over a little bit. So there wasn't really a stagger that round, but I could understand why certain people gave Teofimo Lopez that round. Either way, Josh Taylor, in my view, one of the main faults that I've seen from him in the second half of the fight is that he really was not utilizing his feet a lot of the times. And Teofimo Lopez, especially when you're very up close with him and personal, unless you show him that you're able to move in and out quite frequently with your feet and that you're not afraid to go in and outside the range, not just exchange with him, but that you have great counter punching ability as well, it's going to be very hard for him to respect you. And Josh Taylor did not really show that he had great counter punching ability in this fight. I said that one of the punches that he was going to have to land in this fight, in my view, was that of the left hook and also that of the right cross. He really was not able to land either of them quite well. It just is what it is, and he rarely ever threw the right cross, or excuse me, the left cross in this fight. I think that was a punch that he should have tried to utilize, especially, trying to get the lead hand or the right hook and then trying to lead Teofimo Lopez right into a left cross, but he very rarely threw it. And a big problem is that Josh Taylor was pretty much going right in front of Teofimo Lopez. He was kind of plotting for it at times. He would not move in and out very well. And I think he thought that Teofimo Lopez was going to be a little bit more weak mentally than what he actually was in the fight. But Teofimo Lopez, once again, to give him credit, he was very highly attuned in this fight, and he was very mentally prepared and physically prepared. So like I said, I got to give him a lot of credit. But as for Josh Taylor, a lot of the times, and I said this for both fighters, he can keep his hands down a little bit too much, which of course is a main flaw in a lot of boxers, as well as Teofimo Lopez. And on top of that, Josh Taylor would not move out when he needed to. He would come straight forward towards Teofimo Lopez, sometimes with his hands down, and then he would try to prepare for a punch. But when Teofimo Lopez sometimes was throwing back at him, he would not move out of the way to the best of his ability, or he would keep his hands down way too much, which would cause a lot of counters that would land from Teofimo Lopez, especially with the lead hand or that of the right cross. So Josh Taylor, once again, has really no one else to blame but himself, especially for certain things. What are some other faults that I've seen in this fight? Well, let me also state this, and maybe it was the year layoff, I'm not sure, but I really also have to question how good Josh Taylor really is in terms of the mid-range and the outside game. Because once again, when he was not really able to bully that of Teofimo Lopez, he looked severely limited in this fight. He showed no dominant lead hand in this fight whatsoever. He did not show a very good left cross in this fight. And to be quite honest with you, it looked like he was afraid to try and box with Teofimo Lopez. And there's been certain times also at other point in times in his career where pretty much the main game plan for Josh Taylor, once he knows he's in a tough fight, is to try excuse me, is to try to get in there and bully that fighter with good hooks and good clinch work and trying to, outdo their body, pretty much try to maneuver their body into certain shots, uppercuts and hooks especially, which may work with certain other fighters. It worked with Regis Prograis and it also worked with Jose Ramirez, but Teofimo Lopez was able to counter it because he was able to move, utilize his feet, and use certain angles. And then on top of that, with his power and with his superior hand speed, he was able to get Josh Taylor at certain angles. And once, that pretty much happened, Josh Taylor really had no answers. So I do have to wonder, even if Josh Taylor, even had he been very active, would Josh Taylor still have won this fight? Because Josh Taylor, now that I think about it, I can't really think of a fight to where he was super dominant against a fighter on the outside or mid-range. Usually when Josh Taylor is dominant, it's usually because he is able to outbully the fighter. Now, he's still very good, in most categories, and I think that maybe the year layoff, maybe it did a little bit of damage. But at the end of the day, Teofimo Lopez, hands down, is the best boxing talent that Josh Taylor has ever fought, no doubt about it. He is more talented than Regis Prograis. He is also more talented than Jose Ramirez. So maybe it's just that Josh Taylor was able to look better against those guys in the mid, long range, and in the up close range against all those fighters. And that Teofimo Lopez, he was just a little bit too fast, a little bit too powerful, and a little bit too intelligent than what Josh Taylor expected. Now, who knows? Maybe if a rematch happened, maybe Josh Taylor can do much better, and maybe he can win the fight. I just don't personally see that. I think that certain holes were exposed in his game. I think that he showed very poor mid-range and especially long-range game in this fight. He showed very little confidence in his lead hand, in my view. He did not throw the left cross, which in my view was a punch that he was really going to have to throw a lot in this fight. He was going to have to try to set Teo up with that, with the lead hand, try to stick it in his face. And, you could tell that Josh in the middle of the fight, in my view, even though for how tough of a, fighter mentally he is, you can tell that, in my view, that a little bit of him quit in this fight because he knew, I believe, by about probably the sixth or seventh round that he was not winning this fight. I did not see a great amount of fight, or at least a great amount of intelligent fight from that of Josh Taylor in that of the second half of the fight. Now, of course, he still fought back, but, sometimes a fighter can quit or an athlete can quit, even though it appears that they're not quitting because they're still attempting to fight. But, Josh Taylor is supposed to be one of the best fighters in the world. You were supposed to have much more of an intelligent game plan in this fight, especially in the second half of the fight. And you had the longer reach, you had the height advantage in this fight. Teofimo Lopez still has not fought anyone truly A grade at the 140-pound weight division. And Josh Taylor was supposed to take advantage of all those things. Not only did he not take advantage of those things, but he showed that he had certain holes in his game that Teofimo Lopez was able to expose majorly. So we'll see what ends up happening with Josh Taylor. But in my personal view, and I said this for both fighters, it really was a crossroads fight for both fighters. Because once again, Josh Taylor is a Caucasian Scottish fighter. No one in boxing really gives a shit if those type of fighters continue onwards in their career, because boxing, once again, at its peak form, is usually highly promotable with that of Black American and also that of Latin American fighters or Latin fighters. Now, of course, you'll have the, every once in a while, a Tyson Fury or, a Canelo Alvarez, of course, who's a Caucasian Hispanic, if you want to count him. But other than that, they don't really care about those fighters in terms of boxing, at least when you talk about the major boxing picture. And I said that Teofimo Lopez was going to be the more promotable fighter here. And if Josh Taylor, at least this version of him, maybe he was the same Josh Taylor, maybe he's a little bit worse. Who knows? But is this Josh Taylor, if he performs like this, going to defeat Regis Prograis or, some of the other guys, that new Puerto Rican dude? I believe Xander Zayas or whatever the hell his name is. Is he going to defeat some of those guys? Who knows? I certainly don't see Josh Taylor beating any of the elite 147 pounders. Just my personal opinion. So we'll see what happens. As for Josh Taylor, the best thing for him, I think that maybe a rematch with Jack Catterall, or maybe, a rematch with Jose Ramirez, one of those fights, maybe even a Regis Prograis, kind of get back in the ring a little bit slowly. And then maybe if you're able to win some of those bigger fights, maybe then Teofimo Lopez will give you a rematch. Who knows? We'll see. But as for Josh Taylor, I just don't see him ending up very well for him, because I don't think that the boxing world really sees him as the most promotable fighter. Once again, you're a European fighter from that of Scotland. I don't think that they really had big plans for you in the first place. You were pretty much going to be tried to be used as a stepping stone for Teofimo Lopez, and you had a very piss poor performance against that of Teofimo Lopez. I just don't know if I see it going very well for Josh Taylor from this point out, but we'll see what happens. As for Teofimo Lopez, the winner of the night, where do I see him going? Well, pretty much wherever he's willing to take himself. There is still, of course, certain faults that I see within his game, certain foot positioning that, in my view, especially when he likes to showboat, that he is going to have to be very careful with, or sometimes when he likes to lunge with the punch, he's going to have to be very careful. At times, of course, on the inside, he does have a little bit of problems with certain fighters countering him. He does need to be careful with keeping his hands down a little bit too low. He needs to keep his hands up a little bit more. And there's some other things, but all in all, of course, you have to be very impressed with Teofimo Lopez, especially with some of the issues that he has shown over the past couple of years. So very impressed with Teofimo Lopez. As for the future of his career, where does he go from here? Well, in my personal view, if you're Teofimo Lopez, you probably try to unify the 140-pound weight division. And at this current moment in time, it looks very possible and viable that Teofimo Lopez might actually be able to unify that weight division. Because is Jose Ramirez really going to beat this version of Teofimo Lopez? I highly doubt it. Is Regis Prograis going to be able to beat this version of Teofimo Lopez? It's possible. He has great power and a great chin, decent maneuverability, but Regis Prograis also has a very big defensive problem as well. He does not like to keep his hands up very consistently. So Teofimo Lopez, more than likely, at least if he shows up in the same condition here, and possibly even a little bit better, because he might now have his confidence back. I just don't really see a main contender at the 140-pound weight division right now that would truly beat that of Teofimo Lopez. And then, of course, after that, who knows? He might go up to 147. But, of course, there's a lot of big fights that could be potentially made. Devin Haney, Javante Tank Davis, Shakur Stevenson. Those are all fights that, could potentially happen. And Teofimo Lopez has now showed up back in very good form. Now, to talk about some of those fights, do I believe that Teofimo Lopez could beat any of the fighters that I just mentioned? Between that of Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, and Javante Tank Davis, it's very possible. And I'll say this, if he shows up in that form, and especially is very defensively responsible, even tunes up a little bit more, it's very possible that Teofimo Lopez could even beat all those guys because he's very powerful, he's very speedy, and he does have a decent boxing IQ, at least when he is on his best night. So Teofimo Lopez, after this fight, if you're any one of those fighters, he's going to be a very big problem for you. I would love to see Teofimo Lopez versus Devin Haney. Devin Haney, of course, seems interested in a possible Javante Tank Davis fight, but I would personally love to see Teofimo Lopez versus Devin Haney. As for the pound for pound ranking, because this was, in my view, going to be a top 10 pound for pound fight, I had Josh Taylor in my top 10 pound for pound, privy, of course, to this loss to Teofimo Lopez. So where does this put Teofimo Lopez in my personal view? Well, it has to for sure put him within the top 10 pound for pound. Because not only did he just recently defeat Josh Taylor, who of course was the former unified champ of the 140-pound weight division, he also defeated the former number one pound for pound fighter, in my personal view and in many other people's opinions at the time, at that current time, Vasily High-Tech Lomachenko. So once again, Teofimo Lopez, very good performance, very good to see him back on the horse, in terms of actually being able to regain his confidence and put on a very good performance. As for Josh Taylor, we'll see where he goes from here. I've always liked Josh Taylor as a fighter, but he is gonna have to fix certain holes in his game, possibly even get a new trainer. So we'll see what happens with that. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see where Mr. Teofimo Lopez goes from here. I would love to see a fight between him and Devin Haney, even Javante Tank Davis, although I don't think that fight is going to happen. If it does happen, it's not going to happen for a while. Shakur Stevenson, any one of those fights would be very particularly interesting. But as for Teo, what fight do I more than likely see as the most viable for him? Probably either potentially a Jose Ramirez or a Regis Prograis fight. I'd love to see either one of those fights, but we'll see. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.